I feel like now it's more figuring out, getting very clear on where I want to go. The first couple steps, having a somewhat high level plan of the middle steps isn't a bad thing. I think that's good, but just trust it's going to get clear as you start going. I'll tell my clients, and I rant about on my podcast all the time, action brings clarity. It's like, just take one step, the next one will be way clear. Action brings clarity.
We're your co-hosts, Vicky and Laura, and this is the Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast, the ultimate guide for ambitious business founders and startups. Hear from business heroes who faced unexpected challenges as we unpack how they slayed their dragon and reignite your instinct to conquer your dragon. Hello and welcome to the Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast. Quick question. How many times have you bought a goal planner, a diary, an exciting calendar with a view to getting more organized or more productive? It'll keep me on track, focused. Well, good on you. And did it work for you? Personally, I have 6 or 7 annual planners in the planner graveyard, and I'm not really sure how long they help me for, maybe a month or so at a time. Well, today's guest has a new approach to planning and planners, and he's a little goal crazy. Jason VanDevere is the inventor of the Goal Crazy Planner. He hosts his own podcast, the Goal Crazy Podcast, and he made the brave decision to step away from his family business to go into business for himself. Now he's embracing crazy. So let's find out what that really means. Jason, welcome to Resilient Entrepreneurs.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you guys. You ladies.
We don't mind either way. Thanks, Jason. We appreciate you being here. So can you tell us a little bit about what we need to know about your backstory to understand who you are now?
Yeah. So before I started Goal Crazy, I worked for my family. My dad is a car dealer in Akron, Ohio. So if you're ever in Ohio, you'll see our last name all over the place, right? They have a handful of different dealerships. So our last name, VanDevere, Chevy or Kia or Buick, just around town. So I was working for him at one of his dealerships, basically on the path to become a car dealer. So my dad is the 3rd generation in our family to be a car dealer. So I'd be the 4th generation to be a car dealer. And the program that he had me going through essentially was to work in every department for several months, maybe even some of them several years, so I could learn the whole business. But as I was going through there, I would say I learned a ton. It aligns with my personality type, which is highly extroverted. So the sales environment was great, but it's just not something I was excited about. We're going to talk about planners today or some of my other entrepreneurial things. Like, I could talk about that forever. But if I meet somebody in the car business, I'm not excited to talk about it. And not that that's why I left, but there wasn't a natural passion there. And Vicky, you were talking about how you have some planners in the planner graveyard, right? And when I was going through this process there, I was getting really deep into the self-help, personal development, and I was trying out all of these different planners. And it's like they all had the right copy to sell me the planner, right? Like, oh yeah, this is what I want. They had all the keywords, but then I would get it and it just didn't deliver on what I wanted. So it became maybe an obsession or something I was really excited about were these planners, and I wanted to make my own planner that I felt like would solve this problem. So eventually I decided to leave the car dealership. And one of the reasons why the word crazy, why that's in the title, is everybody told me it was the craziest idea to turn down the opportunity to become a car dealer and have this seemed like guaranteed road to success at a young age to go sell planners, which now planners are kind of this trendy thing where a bunch of authors and people are launching them. But 6 years ago when I was doing it, everybody was all on like, no, it needs to be an app. Nothing paper product. It needs to be an app. So they all told me it was a crazy idea. I did it anyways. Very glad I did. And I spent over 7 months just interviewing successful individuals. Whether it's entrepreneurs or authors, just people who did something neat. And I was trying to figure out how they set their goals, organize their time, held themselves accountable to accomplish them. And then I made my design for my planner. And I ended up hosting 7 focus groups then, where I would take people through the design to figure out if it worked, what made sense, what didn't make sense. And after somewhere near the last couple, it was just working. And then I launched the Goal Crazy, officially started selling them in 2019.
You jumped from something very established to something very new. I guess the question is, What did it take for you to make that decision, backing yourself to do what you truly knew was right for you?
Yeah. So I think this was something that was stirring on my heart a lot. Like, this is what I wanted to do. And for a while I thought, well, what I should do is I should wait maybe 10 years, 20 years, become a successful car dealer. Then I'll have, I don't know, then I can just leave that and go help. You know, a lot of times you'll see these authors who, you know, they had this big business, then they left it and wrote books about how to run a big business. So it was like, okay, I can go do that, right? Go be the successful car dealer and then go do what I really want. But do I really want to wait 10 years to start living the life that I want? Right, I'm hopefully alive in 10 years either way. And when I tried to really realize what is holding me back from doing it now, yeah, it was just my fear. It was like I knew what I wanted to do. I just needed to try it.
Yeah, it's so brave, and it's actually quite rare. I mean, Vicky and I talk to so many entrepreneurs on this podcast who start entrepreneurship in their 40s and 50s. It's actually more common at that age group than any other. And I'm excited by the idea of younger people jumping into entrepreneurship at an earlier stage. And like you said, not waiting, living their dream life now. What were those early days like for you when you first launched the business?
It was really rough. So probably like the first 2 years, I didn't really even make money from the business. I was selling tens of thousands of them, but just figuring out the right way to market and grow, and probably even getting over my own internal beliefs of just the right way of viewing money and what I'm worthy of earning. I was just spending it to figure out how to really get the business to grow. So that was really difficult. I was blessed that before I left the dealership, so one of the other business I have is I have rental properties. So I had bought in this 4-unit apartment building, and I could live in the one apartment and rent out the other 3, and it could provide me a place to live and make me enough money to survive. Now, this was like stripped down lifestyle, right? Like peanut butter, noodles, not really going out, doing very much fun stuff. So it was a grind, but I think like if I didn't go through that season, I was young. I'm still young, so I'm 29, but like I was maybe 23, 24 years old when I was going through this. And if I would have figured it out immediately, I think I would have just spiraled out of control because I was super immature. I was basically a few years out of college. I would have just been this immature kid with an injection of money, which would have probably made me way more immature. So it was really hard at the time, but looking back on it, I'm so glad that it happened because it formed me into, still have a lot of forming to do, no doubt about that, but it just helped me grow up and just helped me learn a lot of lessons that I thought I was a genius at the time and probably had to realize I wasn't so that I could then start learning how to get better.
Yeah, we all think we're geniuses at that age, don't we?
Yeah. And it still goes right now. It's like you'll have these good months where it's like, oh yeah, I'm a genius. I can sell anything, this. And then it's like you'll have some weeks where things are not so well, and it's like, I have no clue what I'm doing.
None of us have any clue what we're doing, Jason. Yeah. None of us do.
But it's like I wouldn't trade it for anything. And right, eventually you start getting some consistency and learning some things that definitely work, but it's part of the process.
It is, and it is a process, very much so. I'm curious more about that rental market hack, a little bit of a life hack that you are using there. And I've heard lots of other people, and I think this happens a lot. So our audience is all around the world, of course, and it's more common in the US to do this, but to buy the multi-unit properties, live in one, rent the rest. And then using loans and things to then you can continue to build on that. Talk a little bit about how that works. I think it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it for anybody, especially when you're young and you can live somewhere like that. So I had a 4-unit, which I think one of the benefits, a lot of times people start with the duplex and you live in one, rent out the other side, but it's hard to actually to be cash flow positive with that. Maybe you can get the rent from the other side to cover all of your expenses, so then you're living for free, which that's great, right? Or maybe you're just living and paying a couple $100 because, I don't know, maybe your mortgage payment's $1,000, you rent the other side out for $800. But if you go to the 4-unit, depending on exactly how the deal is and the price points and the rents, but for that I only needed to rent out 2 of the apartments to cover all of my expenses and put some money aside for repairs. So then I could have the fourth one to live in and the other one to just go into my pocket. So I would highly recommend it. And I think the multifamily works. And if you're an entrepreneur, sometimes it's hard to get loans. I don't know how that is in other countries, but here in America, if you start a business today and you're fully self-employed, it's probably going to be pretty hard to get a loan, right? Because very high risky. So the interesting thing with the 4-unit is I couldn't get approved for a very large duplex, and that's what I originally looked for. But I could get approved for a 4-unit because I could use the income from the other units as my gross monthly income to then get approved. So I was able to get approved for a bigger place, and that got me over the hurdle of not having a long track record because I was young and I could get a place. It can snowball very quickly from there because then, so now I'm up to 34 apartments, so it's grown, but I moved from there when I got married. We did it again with the duplex, and then we just moved just in February and now have a real house. You could just get so much further ahead if you can go 10 years of your life without paying rent and actually making money off of where you live and building this asset. It's a lot easier to get ahead than if you look, I love people renting, right? This is what earns myself part of my living. But yeah, it's better to get ahead if you don't have to do that forever.
Oh, thanks for that tip. I think that, it's more than a tip. It's such solid advice for somebody who has that mindset. I would dare say it's not for everybody. It's high risk. And you came from a background, as you've described, of business, of entrepreneurship, of a successful family business. So no doubt that gave you some inner strength and courage and just awareness of how these things work. So I really love that you shared that. And thank you. Thank you for sharing it. My other interesting point is you're making enough money to keep you going for a lifetime. That could be your business, yet you've decided that you want to build a business that's separate and no doubt more than one.
So the beauty of real estate is it's so tried and true. So if you're like a younger person, and I'm young, so time is on my side as far as starting these loans when I'm buying a property. I can have all of them paid off before the age of 50, which is a wonderful opportunity that I have just because of my age. But rental properties, it's very consistent. Where my e-commerce business, I've been very blessed to have put in the work to get it over the hump to really be consistent. But when I have a family and my wife doesn't work, we have 2 kids, it's like just knowing that we have the passive income that's just so tried and true from rentals brings us so much peace of mind for me providing for our kids that, look, if something crazy happened to my planner business or something crazy happened to me, it's like my wife still has this asset that it's not 100% passive. I do manage it myself. I have an employee and he helps me, but it's a lot easier to run that than my wife trying to run my e-commerce business, if you follow me on that.
Yeah. I was going to ask, I'm like, are you the landlord? Do you have to answer the calls at 3 a.m. when a pipe bursts? Like,
So I haven't
what's the downside?
First, they would call my assistant. I'm sure he would be asleep and it would find its way to me. But I am. And there's, like you said, there is a risk. You can hire a management company to do all of that stuff and take the risk for you, but they also want their share of the pie. So then it's just risk and reward.
Hang on, hold that thought. I apologize for the interruption. I just wanted to take 15 seconds of your time to thank you for being a part of this growing community of resilient entrepreneurs. If you could do us just one massive favor and subscribe, you'll be notified of the next great episode of this podcast. And speaking of great episodes, let's get right back to it.
So back to your planner business, what advice do you wish someone had given you before you launched it?
Before I launched it, the thing is probably people gave me all the advice that I needed to, and I just didn't listen. And I would I'll give you an example. Everybody kept telling me growing your email list, that's what you should be focusing on. That's the name of the game. It took me years to actually decide to do that, right? I read book after book after book that would say that's what you should be doing. And then I would think, no, I'm going to go straight for the sale, or I want to focus on just Amazon. And maybe I just had to go through that to learn it, but listen to their advice, whether you think it's right or wrong. And yeah, probably also, maybe I would give myself more of a warning that it was going to be hard, but if I knew how hard it was, I might have thought more about should I leave the dealership? Shouldn't I leave the dealership? So it might have been a blessing to not really know what I was getting into and just go for what I wanted.
Yeah, I think that innocence in the beginning actually serves a lot of entrepreneurs really well, because if you knew everything that was coming your way building a business, you'd probably say no thanks. But it's that journey that is the most fun and exciting and thrilling and frustrating and devastating and all the emotions. But if you don't go through it, then you don't learn the lessons. So we're all about the lessons and embracing failure around here. So what's your attitude towards failure? How do you feel about failure? And have you had any big stumbles that you're willing to share?
Mm-hmm. I'd love to say I have a very positive attitude towards failure, but I don't want it at the same time. But big stumbling blocks, what example do I want to go into? Probably like with my Goal Crazy business. During COVID, I get inventory from China. So it was really hard to get inventory in from China. And for a while, I was like, okay, am I going to have to just shut down this business? What am I going to have to do? But you know how they always say there's on the flip side of every failure or negative, there's something positive. And then I launched my coaching business, group coaching. Somewhere around there, I launched my podcast, launched some digital products. I ended up making my business a lot better so that once COVID went away, I was a lot better at it. Okay, let me go back to my real estate here. So when I first got real estate, I was really afraid of any sort of problems that the tenants would have, right? Like you brought up a pipe breaking, right? Like I was terrified if I ever got a call from any of my tenants. And I don't know, I used to pray for I hope there never to be any problems with my rental properties. Now, there's been countless of problems happening. I've had 3 times a tree fall on the roof. I've had apartments flood. I've had just a bunch of air conditioners break at the same time, things that were so frustrating at the time. And for a while, it seemed like, okay, why is this happening to me? I feel like I'm doing the right things. Why am I having all these bad things happen? But in a way, it's because I've had all those problems come up. I've learned how to actually deal with them, where now I have an assistant who takes care of 80% of everything. Maybe earlier I was hoping that I would have this business with no problems, but the reality was I was given something way better as I was actually taught how to become a landlord, right? There's no way I could ever have gotten to 30 apartments if I never had any problems with my properties. It's now I can go tour a property. I can know roughly how much I'm going to have to spend in maintenance and how much different things will cost and how to handle it if it does come up. And I can run a business effectively versus if I never had any problems. So yeah, I don't want any problems, but there's just so many lessons. We're kind of going back to earlier how that time period where Goal Crazy wasn't really making money. It's I needed that. So I need to learn these things. And most of the time the lessons come from problems.
Thank you for sharing that. And I can't help but think that this part of the conversation really is leading into how to plan for such eventualities. Do we need to plan for those times? And tell us more about your planning mindset.
I put plans in place for when mistakes happen, but I think when I have goals, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this, if I have goals that are really impactful and meaningful to me, in a way, it makes some of my problems less relevant. It's if I'm terrified of not having enough money, it's okay, but if I have this goal of this is how much money I want to earn this year and it's more than enough, it's almost I can stop worrying about, well, what if I don't have enough? It's nope, here's the goal. This is where my focus is going to be. So I think when you have those, and if you can do the deep work to really figure out what you want to do in your life, it lights a fire inside of you. If I was at the dealership, I was doing all the things that I should do or that I need to do, and that's great, right? But when I left and it was I'm doing what I want to do. I didn't want to figure out how to get a tree off of one of my rental property roofs, but at the end of the day, I did. I wanted to become a landlord, and that burning desire and the goal of where I wanted to go made those problems less relevant because it was all on the way to where I wanted to get to.
This is great. This is what I call crowding out. If you have a worry or a fear, you crowd it out with the stuff that you do want to do and that you're already taking action on. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're pushing anything away and saying that's bad. I can't have the fear. I can't have failure, because that's an inevitable part of life. But when we put more into the bucket of the stuff that we can do to achieve our goals, then, like you said, it becomes it takes up less space in our head.
I also think it's that what you focus on grows. So the more you focus on problems, the more problems you see. But the more you focus on goals, your mindset stays there. I love that.
I was just going to ask, what do you say to and how do you coach people who know that they have a burning desire for something, yet they just don't see either they don't see the path there, they're just spinning their wheels, they're not getting there, they're not achieving it.
I feel like there's two parts to that question, right? So I think the first part is, I don't think you have to have the whole thing figured out to get started, right? If you know the end point and you know one step, just take that step, the next step will get clear. It's constantly asking myself, what's the next indicated step? But in lots of times the others, what the step might be, and I think this will answer maybe the second part of the question is, I always try and find somebody who's already accomplished what I want to do. I used to have this, still have this mentor who's a car dealer, Jim Shorkey. They own like 20 dealerships, big car dealer. But he would always tell me, like, Jason, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right? So if I can find somebody who's already accomplished what I want to do and ask them how they did it, boom, there's my straight line on how to get there. So I think as I'm starting any new goal or venture, one of the first thoughts that goes through my head, or if it's one of my clients and they're starting something, it's, who do you know who's already done this? And take them out to lunch. Go buy them a lunch, go buy them a coffee, and ask them how they did it, because they can give you the straight line on how to get there. So if you don't know all the steps, I would probably start there as your first step, and they will probably give you the second step. And then just keep trusting that the next step will present itself. Because a lot of times I will try and plan out the whole process from here's where I am, here's the goal for this quarter, and I map out this whole process. But I've almost never had that plan happen how I thought it would. You take the first couple steps and now it's like, oh no, this is the better route, right? Or, oh, well, this just isn't even relevant. Now I need to go here. So I feel like now it's more figuring out, getting very clear on where I want to go. The first couple steps, having a somewhat high level plan of the middle steps isn't a bad thing. I think that's good, but just trust it's going to get clear as you start going. I'll tell my clients, and I rant about on my podcast all the time, action brings clarity. It's like, just take one step, the next one will be way clear. Action brings clarity.
That's exactly right. And often we fear taking the action because we overthink all the things. So I love that your concept is have the big goal in mind and take the first couple of steps, and the rest of the way almost lights itself. Because you figure it out. And sometimes there's many different paths to take, and it can be hard to choose. And maybe one of them's right, maybe none of them's right, maybe all of them are right. And it's the taking the action and the going forward that really is what leads to success. So what's your vision of success? What's your big, crazy goal for yourself?
Probably one of my big, crazy goals. Now, I wouldn't say this is like a vision for success for everyone. This is like one of my big, crazy goals is I want to continue to grow my Goal Crazy business so that I can one day have certified Goal Crazy coaches. And one of the other maybe big goals I have that will be happening in the next year is writing a book. So I'll have a book coming out next year, but that is one of my big goals. But what do I think success looks like? I feel like it's having fun doing the things you want to do, where, it's not like I'm seeking out of what's going to make me the most money, or it's having fun. And how am I going to serve others? I think one of the mistakes I went through a lot of years was whenever I would set goals, I would try and figure out, how am I going to make my life better? What am I going to accomplish this year? What are the habits I'm going to start? And accomplishing goals is rewarding in itself. I don't feel like, I don't know, maybe if you've had other people say this or not, or you've experienced it, but I don't feel like hitting most of my goals hasn't been as rewarding as I've necessarily wanted to. I almost feel like it's kind of the feeling you get when you finish a TV show series, where it's like you want to know how it ends, but then it ends and you're like, well, now what? Right? I wish I would have just enjoyed the journey when I was figuring it out. So I feel like one of the shifts I went through a couple years ago was realizing in a lot of ways I was focusing wrong. It shouldn't be about what am I going to accomplish this year? How am I going to make my life better? It's how am I going to help others this year? How am I going to make their lives better? What habits am I going to help them start? And there's something that's so much more fulfilling about that. And you're never going to help everybody. And if you do, that's a good problem to have. You'll figure that out. But then it's just this bigger thing, something that's bigger than me that I continue to work towards, rather than just trying to feed my ego because I accomplished something I wanted to.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to go through life and to build a business. And it's a big one that we also believe in, is adding value. How do you add value? How do you create an impact in the community, right? We often talk about the ripple effect, what we do and how it supports others. That's the whole purpose of this podcast in itself, is to be the go-to resource for people who are struggling and they just want a little bit of a lift up, or they want some tips and tricks or some techniques they want to learn from an expert like you. So can we drill down into the goal setting expertise that you bring to the table? And what makes a crazy goal unique? What's different about a crazy goal, and how does it help us get to the impact that we want to create?
Yeah. All right. I love this question. I'm going to tie this back to what you were bringing up earlier of people who just buy tons of planners that are out there. And I think one of the reasons for that, and this will all connect here, is I think a lot of times people think they feel like it's easier to go out and just buy another planner that's going to somehow solve all their problems, right? They don't have enough time. They have all these goals, and it's easier to just go out and buy another planner hoping it's going to solve all your problems than it is to do the deep work to figure out, what do I really want to do with my life, right? And it's kind of like, once you know the answer to that question, everything else is easier. The goals are easier, but you naturally will have more time. Because I think most people, they don't know the answer to what do I want to do with my life. So then they're just doing things, or they're trying to find it by trying a bunch of things. And maybe that's part of the process to figure out what you want to do. But otherwise, they just way overcommit themselves. They're not happy. They're still asking themselves that question in their head, what do I want to do? And they keep trying to do more. So kind of like an interesting thing that happens, I think, with my planner, and definitely when somebody signs me on as a one-on-one coach, is they sign me on or they buy my planner because they want to accomplish more. But the reality is I help them accomplish way less. I just help them figure out what's the impactful things, and you're going to realize that when you do that, you're going to get way more results focusing on the one thing that really drives the needle forward than so many other little things. So one of the big things that separates my planner from the others is it starts with a really in-depth, I call it my life crash course, but it starts with an in-depth self-audit of where you're at in your life right now, what's working, what's not working. You then clarify your dreams, you break them down to long-term goals, short-term goals, and I really help them identify what their most impactful goal is. And when you can get clear on that, what's your most impactful goal, it gives you the ability to say no to things, which is huge. You can say no to things, it frees up a lot of time, and then it lights this fire inside of you, like we were talking about earlier, where now all of a sudden you're willing to take risks because you know what you're after and it's worth it. And problems they don't throw you off as much because you're still going after something that you really want. So that's probably one of the big things that separates my planner, aside from the others, is the life crash course. I believe I have the best planner spread, but that's up to everyone. Needs to find what works best for them. However, another thing that I think is really powerful is I have people in the planner create a scorecard. So it comes with the planner. Basically, for every habit or goal that you have, I always believe there's a habit on the other end that's going to help you get there, right? Your successful behaviors will lead to your successes, or your unsuccessful behaviors will lead to your failures. So whenever I set a goal, I always try and figure out what's the successful behavior I need to do every day that's going to move me to this goal that I want. And I come up with I create a scorecard for myself. In the way I plan out what would my ideal day look like with my successful behaviors that's going to move me towards my goals. And then every night I go through my scorecard. I can show you, but I know you're not going to see the video for people listening. But I go through it on my planner and go through, all right, here's the 10 components that would make my ideal day. How many of them did I do? And if I did 7 out of the 10, I had a 70% day, and I give myself a grade. And it's just an easy way to constantly remind myself of the successful behaviors I need to be doing to get me to my successes, and making sure I'm on track for that. So hopefully you could follow along with that, even though I can't really show it to you guys here through a podcast.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard anyone say anything like that before. Like create your own daily scorecard. It's brilliant. I really like that concept a lot. And do you feel like that does help you get towards your goals faster?
It does. It's just because otherwise it's easy to put things off or to think you're doing it. Like, oh, well, I'll start. Working out is always an easy example for goals. Like, oh, I'm doing that some. But when you have to definitively tell yourself yes or no every day, it just helps make you intentional. And it's like, look, if the past 3 days in a row I haven't done it, I need to change something that I'm doing. Otherwise, it's not going to just magically happen tomorrow. So I think it brings a really strong level of accountability. But what makes it even stronger is, so I have for myself a group of other people who use my planner. And we all text each other our scores every night from our planner. And right? If we all had a 10 out of 10 day, we can congratulate each other. If you had a 2 out of 10 day, we can, encourage you to do better the next day or tease you a little bit about it, whatever. But it's just fun. We all know that, I have my scorecard, and it's like, I know if I do these 10 things, here's my scorecard for those who can't see it. I have this scorecard, and it's like, I know if I do these 10 things every day, I'm going to get to my goals. My successful behaviors will lead to my successes. So all I need to do is make sure I do them every day.
I can only imagine that doing that, even after 5 or 6 days, would empower you significantly, because you'd be seeing your success. You'd be congratulating yourself, even if it's not a formal, like, hey, well done, pat on the back, Vic. But it would be just a psychological, like, hey, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that. I'm rocking it. I'm a star. I can do this again. It's just the evidence every single day that you're actually doing what you said you were going to do, and it's achieving something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's powerful. It's like, even if you have a 2 out of 10 day, it's like, I still had 2 wins today, right? It's not like, oh, this was a terrible day. It's like, I had 2 wins today and try and get 10 tomorrow, but at least I had 2 that I can celebrate today. So yeah, exactly your point, Vicki.
I love it. I love that level of accountability to yourself. And I love that you've even included it with a group thing so that you're accountable to others, because that definitely steps it up a notch. It's easy for you to be like, well, okay, I had a 2 out of 10 day, but you got to tell somebody else that, you had a slack day. It's a little harder. So it definitely encourages you to keep going. I love that. I think that's brilliant. This is such great actionable advice, which always gets me excited on this podcast, so we can share with our listeners some ways to really, truly improve their life. And we thank you for all that great advice you've just given us, Jason. And we like to take an opportunity to flip the script a little bit here and give you the chance to put us in the hot seat and ask Vicki and I a question. You got a good one for us? You host a podcast, so I expect you got questions.
One of the things that gets me really curious is people's dreams. And I think for you guys, how important have your dreams been throughout your career? I imagine this podcast was a dream of yours, but how important have they been for you? And maybe even was there like a moment where you decided, I'm going to start going after my dreams in my life?
Dreams have been the driver for me in my life. And when I'm not aligned to them, or I feel like I'm not fulfilling a dream somewhere, I get this real tangible sense of disquiet, and I feel very restless. Mm-hmm. And it quite often happens around birthdays, because birthdays is when I reflect on my progress and where I'm going, and, halfway through my life and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, I think dreams have been a super important part of what I do and who I am. And I'm just one of those people that can't do what I'm not meant to do. Everything bone in my body just resists, and it feels miserable. Every next day will be even more miserable because I know something's not right. And even if I can't articulate it at the time, it's what I used to call the gypsy wind of change. I'd have to move on. And a part of that, I think, was unresolved stuff. Whatever that stuff is. And I've certainly over the years through personal development worked on that stuff. So there's less need to be the gypsy, yet the wind of change still wafts along. And I think, something in the air, something to immerse myself in, something new to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, so dreams have been a big part of that. Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Okay, let me see if I can follow Vicki. Whew, I should have gone first. She makes it up to follow. Okay, so interesting thing about dreams is that I think I found my dream very early. Like when I was 16, I loved art, and I ended up getting a job as a graphic designer. And I was like, yep, dream job. Absolutely. And I went to college to study graphic design and became a graphic designer. I worked for a newspaper, which was an amazing experience. I worked for a magazine, amazing experience. And I was living my dream career until I got made redundant and then had to figure life out as an entrepreneur. And it was kind of like there, I did not ever had a dream to be an entrepreneur. Like that was just it happened and I needed to figure it out. And, as a mom of young kids and, there was a lot of figuring out for a lot of years. And then Vicki and I worked together on a project. Then out of that came 2 for 1. And out of that, and during COVID is when I think I started to dream again, which is amazing to reflect on, because I haven't really reflected on this till you just asked this great question. But having dreams now is amazing because I feel more driven than I've ever been. I feel like I'm less of a worker bee, just kind of doing the work, and more of a, I'm excited about the things that I'm doing. I'm excited about hosting this podcast. I'm excited about some bigger dreams I have for the near future that I probably talked about a lot already, but I'm going to be talking about a lot more in podcasts to come. I'm sure you're going to be sick of me talking about it, but yeah, I'm giving myself permission to dream big, crazy, audacious dreams now. And it's really exciting, a little bit scary, but that good kind of feeling like I'm stretching scary. And it's an amazing space to be in. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm really, really looking forward to what the future is going to be. I think it's time to write down some goals. I think you're inspiring me in this podcast to write down some goals now, take the dreams and make them a little bit more tangible into goals, and then figuring out the action. Because I'm doing the action, but I'm not writing it down and being a little bit more strategic about it, which I think is the lesson I'm taking from today that I think will be really useful. So yeah,
I think I've discovered what the next Christmas gift is going to be for both of us, but it might be an early Christmas gift. I'm going to hop on Amazon and sort that out right now for us both.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. Is your planner annual, like, or is it like dated, or is it like you can get it and use it anytime kind of planner?
Yes, completely undated, and it's a 90-day planner. So
okay.
Figure out your long-term goals. Like, you'll set 10-year goals and you'll figure out your dreams, but it'll break it down to your most impactful goal to the quarter, and then the habits that are going to get you to that goal. So it's undated though. So if you get it today, there's no excuse why you can't start it today.
No excuse.
Love
it.
That's what I was hoping you'd say too, because I think that makes it so useful. I love that it's 90 days too, because if you said it was a year, I'd be like, oh, that sounds a bit, yeah,
hard work.
I could do that later. I could do that next month, right? It's easier to put off. 90 days is you can, get it done in 90 days. That's pretty exciting. I love that.
We might start an accountability circle with the Goal Crazy Planner 90 day. Who knows? I mean, we're builders. Put Laura and I in a room together, Zoom room or otherwise. 10 minutes later, an hour later, we've built the next great thing. We talk about dreamers. We're absolute dreamers. We get together and we set each other off in the most amazing way. So such a good question. I really love it. What do you think, Jason, it takes to be resilient?
I think when you have the clarity on what you really want to do with your life, I think the resilience will start to come, because to me, resilient, I think of that you're going to have to push through those hard times, and no doubt it's going to come. So when you're resilient, you're going to push through it. And I think that driving force is you have the burning desire inside of you. So what does it take to be resilient? I think it takes you having a clear why on what you're going to be resilient for.
Yeah. Like Simon Sinek said, start with why. Yeah. And then use a planner to figure out the rest. Oh, I love it. That's what we're all about as entrepreneurs. You have to be resilient. We know that. That's why we called the podcast this, because it's a huge mindset thing. And the mindset is key. Personal development is key. And taking action is another key thing, like we talked about today. So Jason, I just want to say thank you so much. What a great podcast. What a great conversation. We will be sharing how to get a hold of your planner in the show notes, of course, for anyone who's listening and wants to get a copy.
This was really fun. And thanks for what you're doing of spreading this message, because you're helping a lot of people. And I can tell you that you're helping me. So thank you.